Today we're gonna sculpt a monkey head on a wooden plate. All we need is Bacon Bond, SuperSclpey Medium, a bit Alluminium Foil and Standart Sculpting tools. This monkey head is the first of a series I'm gonna do for you guys, so let's start. Here you see me using Alluminium Foil, just bulking out to save a bit of clay and making my life easier because the clay has a tendency to be very soft or at least bouncy. The medium clay I use, but I like to use medium clay because it's easier to work with than the firm one, and I like the properties of it. So here you see me drawing in the center lines. As usual, when you watch my videos, I always draw in my center lines because so I know where I am on the model. Having done the center lines, I'm start blocking out his forehead and also trying to build up his eyebrows or the eye sockets. The next step is building up the basic forms and shapes of his head, like the nose bridge, his cheekbones. If you wonder why I'm doing those monkey heads, they're based on a group of my best friends I have, and each monkey is representing the character of one of my friends. The first one I've done was the Gorilla King, you have seen probably in one of my reels I have done previously. Back to this guy. I'm still building up volume of my bony understructure. I try not adding too much clay in one go, so I have more control about the forms I try to sculpt. Because if you add too much clay in one go, you can easily destroy your previously built up forms. You will notice maybe later, oh, my proportions are off, I've added too much clay in one side, I have to scrape it off. So doing it slowly, carefully, will save you time. But fixing errors is something absolutely normal. I always have to deal with some errors or little things I don't like, coming back and change the design in the process if I don't like something, or I have an issue with proportions. That can happen, that's completely normal, especially in the beginning, so don't be afraid. Happens to me, happens probably to everybody. But if you have enough reference material to use for your model, learning the fundamental basic things, that will help avoiding things like this, but you never stop learning. At this early stage of the sculpture, it's all about building up forms, building up volume, checking the proportions. It always looks a bit messy in the beginning, so it's not very fancy. You come to that stage later, but till then, it takes time, it takes a bit patience. It can be frustrating, but keep going. This is how it looks when I talk about bouncing clay. You see the jaw moving when I press against it. That can happen with polymer clay, but you have to get used to it. And once you're used to it, it's not that bad. But let's get back to the model. You see I'm starting adding more details as the bottom lip, cleaning the surface, rounding edges. I prefer to clean the surface of my sculpture much as I can using my tools before using any solvent. Using the back end of my clay shaper, creating the eye sockets so I have space for his eyes later. Giving the nostrils the typical shape monkeys have. It's time to add eyes and fill those empty holes. I'm using round balls of clay, they're not pre-baked. I could have made my life way easier using them pre-baked, but why I did so you're gonna see later. It can be a bit delicate and tedious adding eyelids to fresh balls of clay and shape the form of your eyes, especially in this scale, because you will get into the volume of your eye or the sphere of the eye and destroy it, and you have to come back and clean this area, shape the lid, giving the lid a sharp edge, also keep the eye round and come back with smaller tools in the corners. But with a little bit of practice and patience you will get there. It's the stage of the model now where we can start adding more details and spend a bit more time refining the details. This is also a fun part, adding little bits, not moving that much material anymore, and shaping the character of the model. I use 2 round pieces of clay to create his ears. I just stick them to his head and use my Standart Sculpting tool to form the shape of the ear by pressing into it, moving clay around till I have the right shape of the ear. Sculpting ears is not easy. You definitely need some reference and maybe a bit of practice and copying the reference and getting the anatomy right of the ear, but after a while it's not a problem once you understand the form and shapes of the ear. Sculpting a relief on a wooden plate can be tricky, especially when it comes to ears, so everything what is behind the center line, because the ears usually are not that far in front, so I have to make it look right, trick the eye a little bit by using perspective or foreshortening of the ear, or in this case I'm lucky because monkey ears are usually a little bit wider and sticking outside of the head, so I get advantage of this. I'm adding more clay to his upper lip because I'm constantly checking the model and the silhouette if everything is alright or got the shape I'm looking for, and it was just too flat, so I'm just adding more material. See, now we have a nice round surface and a nice upper jaw and upper lip. Adding more clay to his cheekbone because there was something missing. Here I'm using the backside of my sculpting tool, what is more curved and round, to press into the upper lip. I'm trying to shift and move the clay upwards to the nose and create a round dome on top to get more the look of a monkey. It is important to know where to add material and build up volume, but it's not always about that. You have to know how to manipulate your clay to push him to the right directions to get the right look of your model. As I mentioned before, this character is based on one of my friends, and my friend is always wearing a beanie hat, so it's time to make a beanie hat for him. What I did, rolling 2 snakes of clay, pressing them onto his forehead, and start blending both pieces of clay together. This could be done also easier, just rolling out a big snake of clay on your desk, cut a stripe and adding it to a head, but I had a different concept or idea in mind, so I left it, just had a bit extra work blending both pieces together and cleaning the edge. But enough of his head for now. I start adding clay so I can work on his beard next. I'm using my fingers to press the rolls of clay against his jaw, and also I'm squishing the end of the clay so it's thinning out towards me. That's way easier than trying to do this with a sculpting tool because I have pressure of both sides, and after this I can come back with my tool and blend the transition from the clay I press to the jaw to the actual jaw, have a nicer transition. I'm pulling little spikes out of the beard, more like a stylized element of the beard. It's also easier doing it with my fingers than using a tool. Here can you see why I didn't use pre-baked eyes. I'm sculpting the iris and the pupil into the eyes, what will create a nice shadow and gives the character a different look because this sculpture won't be painted. So all I have to deal with, or all I have to use or can use, is light and shadows. That's why it's important to build up enough volume on your model, which creates a nice shadow, midtones and highlights. If you watch my videos, you know me using kitchen foil, cling wrap to create folds and wrinkles on the models. There's just a simple reason why I'm doing it, because if I would carve into the clay just with a bare tool, I will have very deep textures, very hard edges, but the kitchen foil helps avoiding this problem. My tool can dig that deep into the clay and I have very soft edges. But it helps creating this nice flowing beard hair texture, so I think it's quite useful doing it that way. Loop tools are very useful in many ways. But let's get back to his head. I'm start adding texture to the rim of the head, using my Standart Sculpting tool with the blade side, and also I'm using kitchen foil again to have a soft, nice little shadow fold between the rim and the top of the head. Using my tool to add more texture to the head. But I'm also using just normal cotton pieces I found somewhere in the kitchen and get used to the texture by pressing it into the clay with my tool, and see, nice texture. I could have sculpted the texture of the fabric as well, but that would take very long, and it's always good to save a bit time so you can spend your extra time on the sculpture detailing or coming up with new ideas and recording more videos for you guys. But let's get back to him. I'm started adding clay to sculpt his eyebrows, and I think adding eyebrows to your character gives him a little extra boost to make him more lifelike and creates this vivid look. But while sculpting the eyebrows, I noticed one of the eyelids is a bit wonky, so I came back with a tool, fixing it, bringing it back into position. This is also something I told you before. It can be a little bit nerve-wracking and also tedious working with fresh clay eyes instead of pre-baked eyeballs. But back to the eyebrows now. The last thing I have to do is adding a necklace. This character is based on one of my friends, and my friend is a very wise person. He's almost living like a modern shaman guy in a big city. So that was the point for me. This guy needs a skull necklace, make him look like a shaman. But I'm not trying to focus on too many details on the necklace because it's secondary. I want the viewer to concentrate more on the character of the figure and looking into his eyes. I'm working on the finishing touches, rounding up the beads, adding more decorative elements to the necklace and clean the rim of it. After that, I use a soft synthetic brush, cleaning the model one more time with isopropyl alcohol to get rid of some tool marks and maybe fingerprints. I really hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Please let me know what you think. Thank you so much for subscribing. Till next time, Dennis.